Good evening and thank you for joining us. Facing its first major test of this new term, Thunder Bay City Council voted last night to approve the designated truck route. It's an effort to reduce the number of transports using Arthur Street and Dawson Road.
The proposal has been debated for years with strong reactions from those on both sides. And as Ryan Bonazzo tells us, the narrow 7-6 council decision illustrates just how contentious the issue is.
All in favor?
After agonizing over the decision for more than 4 hours on Monday night, council finally voted to approve a designated truck route through the city by a razor-thin 7-6 margin. The bylaw, which is expected to come into effect in the summer, will direct transports to enter and exit the city by way of Highway 1117 and the Thunder Bay and Harbour Expressways, and stay on those roads for as long as practical before veering off to make local deliveries. The decision is welcome news to many residents on West Arthur Street and Dawson Road who've long complained that the amount of heavy truck traffic has outgrown those two-lane roadways.
I came around a corner driving west on Dawson Road to see an oncoming truck in my lane trying to pass a snowplow and a line of vehicles behind it where I had to slam on the brakes just to not get hit by a truck trying to pass a snowplow during a snowstorm.
But the surrounding municipalities of Oliver Papoonge, O'Connor, Gillies, and Nebing all oppose the move, saying this simply shifts the problem somewhere else, namely Quequebeca Falls, where heavy truck traffic is expected to increase by 500 trips per day. And some business owners are also concerned, saying the designated route will increase travel times and service delivery costs and siphon away customers.
When they opened the Harbour extension, Santorelli's lost 30% of their volume. We can't afford to lose another 30%.
The village of Quequebeca Falls, the number of trucks traveling through the community will more than double.
But Councillor Trevor Gertuga, who's lobbied for a truck route for years, didn't buy it.
Quequebeca is 4 lanes, 50 kilometers with a school. Now, what do you think is more safe? That route or 70 kilometers, 2 lanes in front of 5 Mile School?
The difference is that you're doubling the number of trucks in front of Quequebeca Falls.
On double the lanes
Onto
and lower speed
through
limit.
Quequebeca Falls. So you're doubling the trucks, which we believe will have safety impacts.
Doubling the lanes and reduced speed limit. Thank you.
And while some on council were left with a number of lingering concerns about moving more heavy trucks onto the Thunder Bay and Harbour Expressways,
highways and expressways are not supposed to have traffic lights on them. If you want to get into an accident, go to an intersection.
The move narrowly passed and is expected to be ratified next month. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
That wasn't the only high-profile decision made by council at a meeting that lasted into the wee hours of the morning. Councillors also voted to opt in to Ontario's retail cannabis model and allow brick-and-mortar pawn shops within city limits. That decision received unanimous council support. While city police have some concerns about putting more stress on already overburdened officers, the $129,000 Thunder Bay is expected to receive later this month from the province to help ease the transition of allowing retail cannabis sales, with more money to follow in the spring, was too much to pass up. The Keller councillor Brian Hamilton even asked whether the city can take it a step further and get in on the act, eliciting laughter from fellow councillors.
Maybe my question is for administration, like could we sell weed? Illicit drug sales leave our community. We send every year millions and millions of dollars out of our community. CEOs of a big, Molson, all these big companies,
Is there a question here?
Can we sell weed?
I'm happy to answer the question of whether we can sell weed.
Which is?
In the short term, the answer is no. Because as council will likely know that there was just a lottery and licenses or opportunities were assigned, and that's because of a shortage federally of lawful cannabis. In the long term, we don't know.
Gale urged council to focus solely on the question at hand of whether to allow the lawful sale of cannabis within the community. Councillors also voted to assign $120,000 of the money received from the province to the Thunder Bay Police to help ease enforcement concerns.
A decision on whether or not Braden Bushby will stand trial for second-degree murder in the death of 34-year-old Barbara Kentner has been delayed until next week. Kentner's family and friends hosted a sacred fire ceremony near the city courthouse this morning in anticipation of the decision. Before the sun rose, over 30 people gathered around a fire at Patterson Park. The organizer of the event says it's meant to bring Kentner back to her loved ones. Family members expected a decision to be handed down, but the judge says he will need a few more days in order to do justice to the case. Bushby was 18 when he was arrested for allegedly throwing a metal trailer hitch from a vehicle at Kentner on the 9th of January 28, 2017. Kentner suffered internal injuries and died in hospital 5 months later. Bushby was first charged with aggravated assault, but the charge was later upgraded to second-degree murder after months of deliberation by the Crown's office. The judge is now expected to deliver his decision on Monday. Bushby was not present in court today and is currently free on bail.
Thunder Bay police have identified a suspect in an alleged hit-and-run yesterday afternoon. The suspect fled following a two-vehicle collision in the city's North Core. Police attempted to stop a vehicle on Court Street near Ambrose just before 2:30 yesterday afternoon. The person driving a black sedan ignored the officer's request, continued down the street, and struck another vehicle. The suspect is then believed to have fled on foot. A heavy police presence blockaded sections of Court Street and Johnson Avenue for several hours. Tactical unit officers carrying firearms, along with a K-9 unit, searched the area but were unable to find the suspect. Police are not releasing the suspect's name at this time, and they are strongly encouraging the person to turn themselves in.
Thunder Bay OPP have just reopened Highway 527 following the discovery of a body there this weekend. A post-mortem was completed today, but police still haven't released the name of the victim. Foul play is suspected, and more information on the case is expected tomorrow. Meanwhile, Thunder Bay police were dealing with a pair of incidents overnight. The first one involved a robbery at a Circle K convenience store on Arthur Street at around 10:30 last night. Police managed to track down and arrest one of the two suspects. A 19-year-old man is facing robbery charges. The second incident happened at 6 o'clock this morning at the Royal Bank branch on Arthur Street. Police were called about an attempted theft. When officers arrived, they spotted someone damaging the bank's drive-through ATM. The three suspects attempted to flee the area, but they were all arrested within minutes following a foot pursuit. There was significant damage done to the front and inside of the bank machine. One youth and two men aged 22 and 18 are charged with mischief over $5,000 and attempted theft.
Thunder Bay Police and its Police Services Board are looking to increase their 2019 operating budget following the two police oversight reports released last month. The preliminary work has already begun on addressing the OIPRD's recommendations, but it could come at a steep cost to city taxpayers. Alana Pickrell reports.
The big item at this police board meeting held at City Hall was Chief Sylvie Haas' new and enlarged 2019 budget. In the wake of the OIPRD report and recommendations, the police force needs more money so changes can be implemented.
The grand total of $1,082,500 for those recommendations.
That $1 million addition is on top of the $41.8 million police budget, which had already been proposed for 2019. The larger budget takes into consideration the 8 most pressing recommendations, according to Hoth.
First one is really addressing the areas of the multidiscipline investigation team, the peer review process, and really adding a cost to that in terms of someone joining the team in terms of reviewing the cases. The second area, I think, which is very important in terms of sufficient staffing. The report speaks highly in terms of immediate need, in terms of proper resources within our criminal investigation branch, but also the creation of a major crime unit.
Other recommendations in the works right now are police name tags, mandatory Indigenous culture competency and anti-racism training, and the addition of 8 new officers. Police Board Administrator Thomas Lockwood says Hoth has full support from the Police Board for the revised budget, which will now go to City Council.
To be perfectly blunt, I think she was a little minimalist. I think she could have asked for more. I think that her job is to come before the board and ask for everything. She presented a very moderate request, and I had no problem in supporting that at all.
A lawyer for the Thunder Bay Police Services also provided an update on the OIPRD recommendations that they have already begun to tackle. This includes looking into the 10 cases that need reinvestigating, publicly acknowledging systemic racism and reaching out for more funding.
I'm not going to speak for the chief, but I believe this was addressed on the day of the release of the systemic review report. The chief gave quite extensive comments to the media, and I believe that this recommendation has been fulfilled. Obviously, there is more to do, and it's going to continue, but in terms of the acknowledgement component of the systemic racism.
Alana Pickrell, TBT News.
The Divisional Court has denied an application to force a public hearing regarding potential discipline for 3 Thunder Bay police officers. Retired Judge Lee Ferrier will now decide behind closed doors whether a Police Services Act hearing will be held for the officers over their conduct in a sudden death investigation. The matter stems from the 2015 death of 41-year-old Stacey DeBungy. His body was found in the McIntyre floodway, and city police quickly ruled out foul play. The independent police review director later found there was sufficient evidence of neglect of duty by one of the officers and discreditable conduct by 2 others. The 6-month time limit for Police Act charges had expired by that point, and the police board decided to appoint Ferrier to consider extending the deadline for a discipline hearing. That decision was to be made in camera, but several parties challenged the process and called for an open hearing. The Divisional Court ruling by 3 judges released last week dismissed the opponent's application. A date for Ferrier's closed-door hearing has not yet been announced.
The City of Thunder Bay held the first of 2 education sessions this afternoon on a proposed roundabout on Victoria Avenue. The session involved presentations on the benefits of roundabouts, but also allowed members of the public to ask questions or voice any concerns. The proposed roundabout would be located at the intersection of Victoria Avenue and Ford Street. Existing traffic signals at the intersection of Victoria and Lily would be removed, and Lily would become a one-way northbound street. Several people attended the session held at the nearby Salvation Army Community Church. Many of them are strongly opposed to the idea. However, City Project Manager Matthew Miedema is holding firm that this is a necessary addition to the city.
So there's a growth for active transportation network in Thunder Bay for a Ford Street multi-use trail. So we're going to have a growth in north-south movement across Victoria Avenue on Ford Street. At the same time, we have the intersection of Lily, which is 200 meters away. So it's not ideal to have controlled intersections that close to each other. It really deters traffic movement and hampers that.
I am absolutely opposed to it. I don't think a roundabout is needed. I don't think Victoria Avenue is busy enough to warrant a roundabout.
We have long winters. The road is not really being utilized properly, and I do not think a roundabout is going to be a solution to this problem, to be quite frankly.
If it's approved by City Council, construction would begin in the spring and it would tentatively open in the fall. A second education session is to be held tomorrow at the Mariners Hall at 4 o'clock.
A weekend fire at an East End area home has resulted in a fine against a city landlord. Fire crews were called to McBain Street residents early Sunday morning to deal with a kitchen fire. The tenant had been awakened by a barking dog and was able to exit the building without incident. The flames were quickly extinguished, and it was determined the outbreak was caused by cooking that had been left unattended. But an inspection of the home determined there were no working smoke alarms. The landlord has been ticketed for failing to maintain a smoke alarm in operating condition. That ticket carries a fine of $360.
The Northern Ontario School of Medicine heard from professionals from around the world today during a forum on healthcare workforce stability. The event included guest speakers linked in from Sweden, Scotland, Norway, and other parts of Canada. They were discussing the results of NOSM's international partnership, which promotes recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals in rural communities in Northern Europe, Canada, and Australia. The need of NOSM's Lakehead campus says the collaboration has proven opportunities that often haven't been available before.
There's been an opportunity and to provide learning experiences, professional development for local communities that otherwise sitting in remote and rural locations wouldn't have that opportunity.
I think as physicians are moving through their training and considering entering into practice, they will be much more recruitable if they can experience the kind of career opportunities that exist in other places, but with the added richness of the rural environment.
The forum also included a guest speaker from Nunavut who has been working with NOSM on recruitment and retention.
Provincial and federal NDP members were in Thunder Bay today for a discussion on environmental racism. The talks at the Prince Arthur Hotel were organized by the David Suzuki Foundation and Ontario Nature to promote Indigenous-led conservation. Corey Nordstrom reports.
The topic for discussion may not be a commonly used term, but environmental racism is something the speakers and many in the crowd say exists in Canada. It's even been shown recently in British Columbia with the Wet'suwet'en protest. The term describes an environmental injustice that occurs under policy which fails to protect a certain group of people. The keynote speaker was longtime activist and New Democrat MP Romeo Saganesh. With dozens of students from Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School in attendance, he was glad to see the next generation learning from him and the rest of the speakers.
I think it is important for them to hear out what people are saying, but also what the leaders are saying who are in those different parliaments and political institutions in this country. We have a role to play, they have a role to play. They'll be following us after.
Joining Saganesh were his provincial NDP counterparts in Kiiwetinoong's Sol Mamakwa, Judith Monteith Farrell of Thunder Bay Atikokan, and Kitchener's Laura May Lindo. Lindo states that many of the ongoing issues in both the province and country aren't necessarily a matter of the environment or business, but rather from deep-seated institutionalized racism.
Racism that has the most long-lasting effects are when laws and policies are put into practice that will harm some groups, racialized folks, Indigenous folks, more than others. And that's where my concern comes in.
Mamakwa has time and time again reminded his colleagues at Queen's Park about the mercury-tainted water of Big Grassy First Nation. The day's talks were exactly the types of discussion he feels are needed to conserve the land that his people have lived on for millennia.
It's really critical that the wildlife, the lands, the trees, and again, it's all connected to our people, and it's really in this case of the mercury and contamination, and that's why human beings and grassy narrows as humans are being impacted.
Corey Nordstrom, TVT News.
Well, Fiona, we definitely have the snow to prove